Got him. There we go. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. Today we were on Table Rock Lake. We were fishing for some pre-spawn spotted bass and smallmouth, and just got this guy on a Megabass spark shad. Just a little small swim bait. Gotta get it out of his throat. He choked that thing. There we go. Just a little one to start out with, but hopefully we'll get some 3 and 4 pounders in the boat by the end of the day. And I'm just throwing a little 3-inch Megabass spark shad and a 1/4 ounce jig head and reeling it down by some rock piles and rocky spots off some secondary main lake points. And so I'll show you what I'm doing here on my graph as well as my technique, but let's get this guy back in the lake, get in there in the boat. First, let me explain what led me to fishing this spot and catching that fish on a swim bait. Today I'm on Table Rock Lake, and the fish are in a late pre-spawn and early spawning pattern. Water temperatures are in the low 60s to high 50s, and a lot of fish over the last week have moved up towards the bank and are getting ready to spawn. But last night we had a really bad cold front, and air temperatures this morning were 25 to 26 degrees when I got out of bed, and throughout the rest of the day they didn't get higher than about 45 or 50 degrees. And this cooled down the water temperature from that 60 degree range down to the 56, 57 degree range. And a lot of times when you have a cold front, when these fish are just about ready to spawn, it'll actually push the fish off the banks and cause them to suspend over deeper water or on offshore structure. And I've seen this happen countless times in the spring. And especially on clear water lakes, bass have a tendency to suspend out in front of the secondary points and spawning areas where they were setting up and just sit out there randomly in 25 to 30 feet of water. And I knew this would probably be the case, and so I started the day by graphing a lot of secondary points in anywhere from 10 all the way up to 25 feet of water with my down imaging and side imaging. And what I noticed is that I was seeing a lot of fish suspended as well as on the bottom in about 20 to 25 feet of water. And they were right where I was expecting to find these fish, right on these secondary points leading into creeks and into pockets where the bass will spawn. But those fish had pulled out deeper than they probably had been 2 or 3 days prior because of that cold front. And so after identifying some areas that had fish with my Fishfinder, I started fishing them. And I fished several areas without getting any bites, which was kind of weird, even though I saw fish down there. And I started by fishing baits that targeted the bass that were on the bottom, so a shaky head, a Ned rig, and a drop shot. And I didn't get any bites, so I switched over to a swim bait, trying to target some of those suspended fish. And despite seeing a lot of fish in my Fishfinder, I didn't get any bites for the first hour and a half to 2 hours of the day. It wasn't until I started changing up my casting angle on these key offshore areas that I started getting bit. Got him. Another good one. There we go. That's a little bit better spotted bass right there. Looks like another keeper. Nice fish. These things are fat and they're chewing that spark shad. This is awesome. And one thing I'm actually doing, guys, is actually fishing uphill up a lot of these points. And this is something I do a lot in the spring. So let me explain what I'm doing there, because literally the bank is directly behind me. I'll show you on my camera here. You can see the bank is here, but I'm casting over there. So I'm working that bait uphill. And that a lot of times will get a lot of these fish to trigger in that pre-spawn and put a lot of good fish in the boat. So let's get this guy back in. So what do I mean by fishing uphill? Basically what it means is that I'm putting my boat on the bank in shallow water, let's say 3 to 4 feet of water, and I'm casting out into deeper water, let's say 30 to 40 feet of water, and reeling my bait from deep water into shallow water. And I'm sure you don't see very many guys doing this when you go to the lake. Most people are going to position their boat out deeper and cast towards shallower water or towards the bank. And what I found in the springtime specifically is that a lot of times you can only get certain groups of fish to fire and actually start feeding when you're bringing that bait uphill from deep water into shallow water. And I've heard numerous theories of why this is the case from a lot of tournament anglers I've fished with over the years. But in my opinion, I think it's because the fish and the bait fish are coming from deep to shallow water in the spring. And the way I visualize it is that in the winter and in the early pre-spawn, the shad are going to be in the middle of the deep channels in a deeper water. And then as that water temperature starts to warm up, getting closer to the spawn, they'll start swimming shallower and up onto shallow points to kind of get on some of the warmer rocky areas and feed on plankton. And so I think these bass are probably anticipating the shad movement from deep water into shallow water, and so they'll position on these points and on offshore rock piles, brush piles, whatever it is, and wait for those shad to swim from deep water up on top of the points, and basically they'll just sit on these points and ambush them. And so because the shad are swimming from deep to shallow water, I believe that sometimes it's more effective to bring your bait from deep to shallow water as well to kind of mimic what those shad are doing. And I have no idea if this is the actual reason why this technique works so well. This is just my theory. But I have heard another theory that I really like from Chris Zaldane. And he says that when you're fishing a swim bait, a lot of times it's better to fish it uphill because those bass will track that swim bait from deep water into shallow water, and they'll try to pin it against the shallow points and shallow rocks because it's easier for those fish to ambush a bait fish or a shad when it's in shallower water and close to an object than when it's out in deeper water and has a lot of area to escape. And so I don't know if it's because those bass are pinning against the point or if they're sitting on that point and ambushing the bait as it's coming from deep to shallow water. It doesn't really matter either way. All I know is that it's a really effective way to catch spring bass that a lot of guys overlook. Good one. Another good fish. Here we go. That one got it as well. That's actually a keeper, it looks like, keeper spotted bass. And when fishing is really tough and you're in these post-front conditions, we had 28-degree temperatures. My truck had ice all over it this morning, and we're in the middle of April. And so these fish can get a little bit messed up if you get those conditions. And so a lot of times you have to go these finesse approaches and get off the bank to get these fish in the boat. But usually when you locate them with your electronics, they're pretty easy to catch. And so that's a really nice one. And I'd take 5 of those today and then maybe mix in a few largemouth up shallow. We might be onto something. And this is an approach that works on a lot of different fisheries, not just deep, clear reservoirs like Table Rock Lake. The common denominator, though, is that the bass are moving up to spawn, then there's a cold front, and it knocks the fish off the banks, and it causes them to suspend over deeper water. Now, deeper water can be very relative depending on how deep your lake is and the water clarity of the lake you're fishing. For example, on Table Rock Lake, deep water might be 25 to 30 feet of water like I'm fishing today, but for example on Lake Dardanelle, which is a shallow, dirty water lake, a lot of times these fish will be setting up to spawn in 2 to 3 feet of water, and when that cold front comes through, they might pull out to 7 to 8 feet of water out in front of shallow grass, lily pads, or just down the bank. And you might be able to catch these fish fishing an Alabama rig or a jerkbait and find them suspended in 4 to 5 feet of water over 8 feet of water just in front of where they're going to spawn. And if your lake is kind of in the middle in terms of water clarity, maybe 2 to 3 feet of visibility, those fish might be pulling up on secondary points or on a row of bushes and pull out to that 10 to 15 foot zone and set up in a brush pile or an offshore rock pile. You can catch them again on an Alabama rig, a deep diving crankbait, a football jig, things like that. And usually you can actually see these fish using your electronics, and what you're looking for are dots that are suspended between the bottom of the lake and the surface of the water. And if you're having trouble identifying what fish look like on your Fishfinder and you want a better understanding of how to use your Fishfinder, check out my playlist on bass fishing electronics. I'll link it down in the description below. It'll explain exactly how to interpret your Fishfinder, find fish, locate them, cast to them, and put them in the boat. Got him. Oh! Crap. Eat a fish. Got him. Missed one. He came back and got it. There's a bunch of them down here. They were all over the grass here too. Oh, there we go. These are all just really fat, chunky spotted bass right here. That's what I'm talking about. Actually, look at that right there, guys. Do you see that? There's a crawfish pincer sticking out of that fish's butt, but he's crushing that swim bait. But do you see that? They are eating crawdads down there for sure, but they're eating that swim bait. I'm fishing this thing pretty close to the bottom, but it seems like they're actually eating crawfish, which is crazy, and that's probably why they're so fat. So I may actually throw like a tube or something down there as well, just to try to experiment and see if they'll bite something other than the swim bait. But I mean, they're choking this thing so well that I'm just gonna keep throwing it. But that's the first time I've ever seen that before. That's crazy. Really nice spotted bass though. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering exactly how I'm fishing the swim bait and the equipment I'm using to catch all these fish. First, the bait I'm throwing is a 3-inch Megabass Spark Shad. This is a finesse swim bait, and it's my absolute favorite swim bait on the market for fishing offshore in 10 to 40 feet of water, when the water has 3+ feet of visibility. And the reason this bait works so well is that it swims really well on even the slowest retrieve. And when you're trying to fish a 3-inch swim bait in 30 feet of water, you need to reel that bait extremely slow. And most baits on the market will not have that great of an action when you're not reeling them that fast. And for this spark shad, I'm throwing it on a 1/4 ounce owner jig head that has a light wire hook, and it's a size 2 or size 3 hook. You don't want too big of a hook in this spark shad because it'll disrupt the action. And for the rod, I'm using a 7'2" medium light action quantum smoke rod, and then I'm putting 10-pound braided line for my main line on my spinning reel and connecting that to a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. And I have about probably 20 or 30 feet of fluorocarbon for my leader. And then for the retrieve with this bait, what I'll do is cast it out into deep water to the area where I marked fish on my Fishfinder and let it sink down to where those fish are. So for example, if I marked fish on my graph in 20 feet of water, I want to let that bait sink down to about 15 feet. You don't want that bait to sink deeper than the fish because these fish in deep water actually will feed up towards the surface. They're not going to feed down very well. And pretty much all the bites in the swim bait are going to be a visual bite. And so you need to have that bait above the level of those fish to get them to bite. And so because these fish were in 20 feet of water, I was counting down my swim bait to 15 feet. And with this 1/4 ounce head and that 3-inch spark shad, I find that this bait falls about a foot per second. And so I counted down for 15 seconds. Then once it got down there, I engaged my reel and started reeling somewhat quickly to start out. This will get the bait moving in the right direction and engage the action of the tail. Then after I reel it quickly for 5 or 6 turns of the reel handle, I'll start slowing down my retrieve. And I'm basically going to be moving my reel around 1 rotation every second or 2. So a very, very slow retrieve. If you reel this bait too quickly, it's going to rise up into the water column and you're not going to keep that bait down at the level of those fish. So my recommendation with this finesse swim bait on that 1/4 ounce head is to reel it as slowly as you possibly can stand it. And usually if you can keep it down there where those fish are and you see them on the graph, you're gonna hook up, you're gonna put them in the boat, and you're gonna catch a lot of fish. It does take a lot of patience to fish this swim bait that deep, especially in 25, 30 feet of water. But if you can stand it, you can catch a lot of good fish doing it. So really quick guys, if you enjoy this video and want to support more content from Fish the Moment, one easy and free way to do that is by going to my website, fishthemoment.com, then going to the Support Fish the Moment tab at the top of the screen. This will take you to a page with a couple different ways to support my channel, and one of those is my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. All you have to do is click on this link, it'll take you straight to Tackle Warehouse, and then if you check out on Tackle Warehouse using that link, I'll get a small percentage of the profits from any purchases you make. And the way this works basically is that there's a little tag at the end of the Tackle Warehouse URL, !from equals Fish the Moment, and anytime you use that link, they'll know that I sent you to the website. And so one way to make sure you always use this link when you shop at Tackle Warehouse is just to bookmark the page and add that to your bookmarks bar. That way, anytime you go to Tackle Warehouse from that bookmark link, you'll be taken straight to Tackle Warehouse using my link, and I'll always get credit for all your purchases. So if you do like the content on my YouTube channel and want to support me further, this is a really easy and free way to do it, and I really appreciate you guys taking a few minutes to do that. Well, this is a predicament. I was changing. I made a cast, and I hooked one first cast on this rocky spot. They're all over this stuff, guys. Casting uphill, came to another rocky spot. I am a mess right now. Look at this. There we go. Not a big one, but first cast. I mean, I'm catching them every single stop I pull up on where I see them on the graph. They're just there. They're choking it. Let me get changed real quick. Okay, so I finally finished changing. I have so much stuff strapped to me, it's sometimes hard to take all my outerwear off. But anyways, this spot right here is loaded. There's a bunch of fish on the graph right here, and I caught one first cast, which is crazy. I didn't even have a chance to take my bibs off. And you may have seen the thumbnail for this video that said 100 fish per day pattern and thought I was exaggerating or thought it was clickbait or whatever. But seriously, this is a 100 fish a day pattern. Just because it's so efficient to find these fish, because all you have to do is graph around for a little bit, and if these fish are in that 15 to 30 foot range grouped up offshore, they will, I mean, I'm telling you guys, they'll just eat this thing. It's so easy to get them to bite, and as long as they're fishing uphill, they're gonna just choke this thing, and you can catch them like crazy. And so just identify those fish with the graph first, then throw the swim bait uphill, and you will just catch them and catch them and catch them all day long. It is crazy. This is the third spot now they're just stacked up on. I'm getting a lot of bites. This feels like a better fish too. Let's see what it is. Taking my time since this thing is pulling pretty hard. Yeah, it's a nice smallie. Oh, there we go. What was I telling you? These smallmouth will eat this thing too, and you'll get some good ones. It's not just all those little spotted bass that'll eat this thing. If you have smallmouth in your fishery, those things will eat it too, and that is a really nice one. Wow, beautiful fish, nice and long. Probably a 2.5 pounder. Let me weigh this guy. I just want to see how much he weighs, because that is a good tournament fish right there. Yep, 2 pounds, 11 ounces. Really nice fish, almost a 2 3/4 pounder. That's a size fish you can catch on that swim bait too. And I mean, I've caught big largemouth doing this. I've caught big smallmouth and big spots. So it's not just a spotted bass pattern. You can get all 3 species doing this, and that is just a beautiful fish. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, beautiful fish. Let's get him back in the water. There we go. Beautiful smallmouth. Guys, I am telling you, gotta get some of these spark shads. Gotta use your electronics and find some of these fish offshore in this pre-spawn. You're gonna load the boat. And that's pretty much it for this video, guys, but I did go on to catch about 30 or 40 more fish on the swim bait over the rest of the day, and I lost several more fish that were just swiping at the swim bait. And so this is a great technique for putting a lot of fish in the boat. And even if you don't have clear water and can't get them to bite this Megabass spark shad, you can definitely catch fish on other baits like an Alabama rig or a jerk bait on your dirtier water lakes, just fishing out in front of those spawning areas when you have those post-front conditions. And so definitely try this if you go to the lake and you think the fish should be up on the beds, but they're just not quite there yet, and you've had a cold front recently. A lot of times these fish will be grouped up just out in front of those areas, and you can put a lot of fish in the boat. So hopefully this video was helpful and maybe gave you some new ideas of how to fish during the pre-spawn. And if you enjoyed, please leave a like on the video and subscribe if you want to watch more videos from Fish the Moment. So other than that, thanks again for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.